Can you tell us what is general liability? What's general liability insurance? Why do you need it? What does it cover? Just kind of the basics of that.
Sure. So general liability is commercial, or we refer to it as commercial general liability, and essentially it's coverage to protect you, your business, or your employees from any type of liability claim. Most of the time it's out of court settlements, litigation, things of that nature.
All right. Now with builders, I know that we request a certain amount of general liability insurance, at least $1 million policy. Is that typically kind of the norm, or is that on the low side? Is that on the high side, or is that just the average amount that you see in there for general liability insurance?
Yeah, great question. In order to be a general contractor in the state of Minnesota, the state requires that these general contractors carry insurance, but their limit is very low. It's only $100,000.
Oh.
The market, for the most part, dictates that people have at least $1 million in coverage, or when we say people, meaning the general contractor.
Yep.
And depending on the size of the project or the type of projects that they do, we have a lot of contractors that have umbrella policies of $2, $3, even up to $10 million.
Okay. So there's a difference between probably the contractor that's maybe building 6 houses to 8 houses a year, and then there's a difference between a contractor that's maybe building 30 to 60 houses a year, and then there's probably a difference with those contractors that are doing the rehabs, that might be working from one project, then they go to the next project. They all have the same type of policy then, or?
Well, that's another good question. When it comes to general liability, first of all, there's the old saying that says you get what you pay for.
Yep.
So whether it's a general liability or what we'll talk about a little bit later is a builder's risk policy, if you got a cheap premium, more than likely you got a very bare bones policy with some nasty exclusions in there, so you're not covered for much. So our job as agents, especially independent agents, we have many companies to choose from, and we pick the policy which best fits the situation. So a smaller contractor that does smaller projects versus the contractor that's doing multi-million-dollar homes, or even multi-million-dollar projects. If it's a development, there are definitely differences.
Okay. So if it was a small contractor that's doing the rehabs and stuff like that, what would you suggest how he goes about looking and shopping for insurance?
So a small contractor, well, first and foremost, you're not going to find a policy usually that is priced. The pricing in it is much different if you went lower than $1 million.
Uh-huh.
So we'll always start at $1 million.
Okay. Because that's what we're going to require is a policy at least at $1 million.
Perfect. So at $1 million coverage, first and foremost, we look at, for someone who's doing rehabs, is what is the basic policy covering, and if that policy has, if they're a general contractor, whether they're small or big, if they have what's called the work performed by subcontractors exclusion.
Why is that so important?
So a number of years ago, the industry got this exclusion worked into their general liability contracts, that if a subcontractor screwed up, that they weren't going to cover it.
Okay.
Unfortunately, there's been many people that have been burned over the years, and Fortunately now for us, we've learned from those mistakes, and we can get policies that do not have that nasty exclusion in there and get them a policy that would actually pay out.
So if I was a general contractor or a small little rehab guy, and I'm kind of looking at the policy that I currently have for my general liability, where do I find that, if I have it or not?
Oh, it's in your declarations page. There's always a section of exclusions, and it'll very clearly state it there. We help contractors on a weekly basis. We sit down with them. We look at their policy. It's real quick for me. I take a look at their policy, and you'll see it, boom, right
so
there.
It stands out for you,
Absolutely,
like that. So
and
that's
many
maybe
times,
one of the things that some of our subcontractors and contractors and home builders should be kind of looking at, that insurance policy that they currently have for their general liability.
Oh, absolutely.
Make sure that statement's not in there excluding. Is it excluding or including that they're looking for?
It's an exclusion.
Exclusion. It's an exclusion. Okay.
Yeah. And the thing is that many times I talk to contractors on the phone, and I just simply ask them, who are you with? And because I've been in the business long enough, they tell me who they're with, and I can tell them.
You've known all the different insurance companies out there, what they carry and what they don't carry. Then you can advise the difference between the two. Now, is there a big difference in the price of the policy between that, with just that verbiage, or it's just how the different independent insurance companies out there write it?
So as a general rule,
yep.
When I say you get what you pay for, you are going to have to pay more to make sure that exclusion isn't in the policy.
Okay.
Because the insurance company is covering for more. So we've been able to, though, negotiate with a couple of our carriers, and they've got us right now extremely competitive pricing. So depending on who they're with, a lot of times we're able to get a premium that's really close to what they were paying before, with a lot better coverage.
Okay. Is there anything else that I should know about general liability insurance for our builders and remodelers out there?
Well, one thing, you talked about a rehab versus, or we would say rehab versus new construction.
Yep.
A little contractor that is doing rehab work, one thing that's important for them to make sure they have in their policy is installation coverage.
What's that?
Installation coverage. So when they have materials delivered to the job site, until those materials are placed on the structure themselves, on the house, whether it's a commercial or a residential, they're responsible for that.
Until it's applied to the home. So.
Correct. So in that meantime, if it's stolen, vandalized, anything of that nature, if they don't have installation coverage while it's sitting on the job site before it's installed in the home, there would be no coverage if they didn't have that.
Oh, okay. That seems extremely important.
It is very important, and it's relatively cheap to buy too.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's good news. So that's one thing when you're shopping for the insurance and stuff like that, to make sure that's something that you should ask the agent, about that policy.
Absolutely. And there's, the thing is that some companies automatically include that into their base policy, and some companies don't. So